We've been waiting for this one for ages. It's finally here. Is this the biggest game of the season so far?
Yeah, certainly the race for the title. I mean, you're looking at two teams that are in tremendous form, complete contrast in style. One that's dominate possession, the others is just kind of all guns blazing, Liverpool. But you're right, arguably the two best teams in the world, both at the peak of their powers. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. As you said there, it's felt like so long. Every time they've played a game, we're one step closer to the big game. And even though whoever wins this game, I don't feel will 100% go on and win the league, it's certainly kind of an indicator of what team obviously is in better form.
Yeah, obviously they'll both want to win it and put themselves in a better position. Do you think this could be the one that decides which way the title goes?
No, I think I'm going to sit with Darren on this one. I think if you look at that run of games to come up after the game on Sunday, there's a lot of difficult games and challenges that they're both going to have to face alongside battling in the Champions League. So I think there's a lot for them to worry about. But I think, like he said, this will put the marker down to say, OK, now you've got to come catch me again, basically, or you've got to keep up with me.
Yeah, plenty of points to win or to lose or to drop between now and the end of the season. But this one feels as though it could be a statement win for either side.
I think slightly differently. I think that because these two teams are so good, and I agree with Darren, they probably are the best two teams in the world, never mind in the Premier League. I think if there is a winner, they will go on and win the league. I just think they're just too good. I just think that momentum they'll gain, that belief they'll gain from the victory, I think they'll take them forward and see them over the line. Even in saying that, though, it will still be neck and neck right to the end. But I think if there is a victor, that victor will be the champion.
So there's lots of decisions then for the managers to make ahead of this one. We're going to take the team sort of back to front. We won't start with the goalkeepers because I think that one's cut and dried. That's probably about the only position, one of maybe only a couple that are absolutely decided on. So we'll start with the defence. Now, obviously, for the home side, for Manchester City, could be a couple of decisions to make in there because we're still not absolutely sure what the fitness situation is with Ruben Diaz, which is huge. It
is huge, and it's one of them. We know how important he is. I mean, since he's come to this country, he's been absolutely sensational. Arguably one of the best. Him and Van Dijk, you probably say, have been head and shoulders above everyone else. But what you say is, in this type of fixture, I don't think you can afford to risk him. So even if there is a slight issue or he's not 100% fit, Liverpool with the front three that they've got, we expect him to play, whoever they play, that's a risk to go and play at a Ruben Diaz, even at 80%. So I think that's one Pep will have to look at. But they've got so much quality there. I mean, look, you've got Laporte, I think will probably play. John Stones will play. Cancelo, I expect Kyle Walker to obviously, in my opinion, play. I think he's still England's best right back. So I think that will be the nucleus of the back four. But it must be tempting for the manager like Pep to see Ruben Diaz. He's training week in, week out. You're probably thinking, do I risk him, do I not? I probably wouldn't, just because of the sheer fact. If they were playing, this is no disrespect to maybe a lesser side, I think maybe get away with it where they know they're going to dominate possession. But when you've got a side like Liverpool that press as they do, I would probably opt to not play Ruben Diaz.
We're trying to get into the heads of these two managers, and Pep's is probably the most difficult one to get inside of ahead of this game. He didn't play him in the Champions League in midweek. Whether that's protecting him ahead of this game or whether it's, as Darren says, looking for games that might be a bit more straightforward for him to try and get his way back to match fitness, we're not really sure yet.
I think with Pep, especially in that situation that you just highlighted, I think he believed in the team that he put out against Atletico Madrid to a point where he didn't need to rush Diaz back for that. He could afford to give him that rest, and hopefully it's for the reasons we all think it is that he comes back into the team against Liverpool. But like you said, you never actually know. But I think the defence is strong enough to deal with it without having to rush him back. I think Walker's back in the team now, and then you've got Stones and Laporte, and I think when they play well, they play very well. And Stones keeps a lot of clean sheets if you look at his record. And I think Cancelo's just that oddball who is basically a midfielder, a fullback, a striker, and a winger, and he's that guy that's going to help compact the midfield and make it hard for Liverpool.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, this, because of the Diaz situation, which makes it a little bit unpredictable. But he and Laporte have made the most Premier League appearances of the possible central defenders in this one, and it was different in midweek against Atletico Madrid. But what do we think for this one against Liverpool, Jason?
I think he probably won't bring him back. I tend to agree with what Darren's saying. I think it might just be a little bit, actually also a little bit necessary, really. I mean, it's not as if Laporte and Stones have not worked as a two. So, I mean, John Stones and I really like Stones and Walker together as well. I think that really works very well. And I think Walker and Cancelo as the fullbacks are the best combination, because Walker can make it a 3, can't he, when Cancelo pushes forward. So I think you'll probably look at that, and I would expect it to be Walker, Stones, Laporte, Cancelo, I think. But I mean, Diaz is so good. Can you afford not to put him in? I think he'll probably go with the 2 that played against.
We should say as well in the Champions League, because Walker was suspended, there was an extra kind of
he played
spoke in that wheel.
He played Ake at left back. But I mean, in terms of the Premier League, I think I'm absolutely certain that Walker will play on Sunday.
Yeah,
I think he's got to. And if you look at the game in midweek as well, if there was a game that maybe Ruben Diaz was maybe fit for, you could have put him in against Atletico Madrid, because it wasn't like they were under any kind of pressure. I mean, Atletico played with 2 centre forwards that were playing right back and left back. So
I think they had not just no shots on target. I think they had no shots in the game at all. Atletico Madrid in that game. So I think trying to judge that defence on that Atletico Madrid performance is a little bit of a false truth.
But it's true what you're saying about Atletico Madrid. I was at the game and I was looking at the game. I couldn't believe what I was actually seeing. I thought to myself, they're going to go for it, because they can't. The players they played up front, you can't play counter-attack football with, because they're not quick enough. They're not quick enough to get past the City defence. So it was strange in general. Yeah,
they might just look for set pieces in the return leg. But we're not here to talk about the Champions League. We're here to talk about the Premier League. What we probably should do before we go further with this is take a look at the lineups from the last time these two met earlier in the season, which was just a fantastic game. Just to give us an idea of who we're looking to put into each hole. They both went 4-3-3 in that. Imagining same sort of thing for this game on Sunday, and of course there were injuries in there as well. When we're talking about the defensive line, if possible, City would like to go with that one, but it might well be that Diaz isn't fit. For Liverpool, Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't available for this one. They've got him back, and they've had a couple of games. That could be one of those
really hurt you.
Yeah. The problem is he's coming up against a Manchester City side that are going to really stretch him. And as much as Trent Alexander-Arnold likes to get forward, sometimes that leaves him a lot of running to do to get back to the defensive position.
Yeah, they've targeted him in the past, haven't they? I remember I was there when I think Sane was playing up against him, and they obviously Sane is super quick. They actually got Sane in behind him, and it hurt Liverpool an awful lot, because it was still as fantastic as he is. And obviously we're talking about how the fullbacks in Alexander-Arnold and Cancelo almost like redefining that role in terms of being playmakers. He is vulnerable, sometimes, isn't he? Especially with that ball in behind him. We've seen time and again he's been caught up the pitch. So I think that City will look at that and think that's an area to exploit. It'll be interesting to see how they then organise their front three to combat it.
Do you know, though, that might be Manchester City's Achilles heel, though, because you're right, they might target him, but you know what, Manchester City, they're vulnerable when the ball goes in behind. Now, if they go and squeeze Liverpool, and then you've got Salah that just spins and Trent, and he probably knows they're going to do that. If they do come onto Liverpool and then Trent just keeps spinning it in behind, Salah, Mane and Jota will have a field day. So I think Manchester City might have to look at this and go, well, yeah, we can target him, we can get him behind Trent, but if we try and press him and squeeze him up the pitch, all it takes with someone of his quality, or even Van Dijk, to be fair, he gets the ball, he plays that long pass, they squeeze up, and Salah knows that. If they just keep spinning it in behind, that might cause Manchester City problems all day.
Does it make a difference then who Jurgen Klopp chooses in the centre of defence here? Because it was Konate in the Champions League who, yes, scored, but was also culpable for the goal that Liverpool conceded. So what do you think comes into his thinking there? Is it Konate? Is it Matip? What do you think?
I think the biggest thing that he will have to do, especially to allow Trent to do what he likes to do best, is for me, he has to play Henderson and Fabinho. He has to play. He can't play one of them, because that's stretched too far, because City go from one side of the pitch to the other so quickly that the midfielder most probably won't be able to get across to help Trent. Whereas if he plays both of them, they can kind of just say, all right, you take care of the left, I take care of the right. And that allows their fullbacks to bomb forward, and they won't really get hit on that counter-attack either.
Yeah, so it could be the less important of the decisions in terms of what happens in the centre of defence.
I think
but it is still a choice.
I think Matip. I mean, Matip's been outstanding this season, hasn't he? I think he seems to go for. He's used Konate quite a bit in the Champions League, hasn't he? Actually, but not so much in the Premier League. And I think his sort of first choice pairing is definitely Van Dijk and Matip. I think. Yeah,
and it seems to be that, as you say, in the Premier League games, especially in the big ones, if Matip's fit, then he gets the start. We'll go on. We won't take it. We don't need to take it turnabout. we can go on to that Liverpool midfield, because I think that's where some of the most interesting decisions are now going to be made in the midfield for these two sides. And there are question marks about the front line as well for both of them. But you would go for something that's more protective from Liverpool's point of view.
I think so, especially at the Etihad. I think you can have your attack there, but you've got to protect yourself at the same time. And they know what City are capable of, especially through the midfield area. If you give the people like Kevin De Bruyne those little gaps in and around your area, he will cause you problems, whether it's a pass or whether it's him shooting. So I think they're going to try and keep City as wide as possible.
Yeah, so put the grown-ups in charge of it. You've also got Thiago to come into the mix. It was Curtis Jones at Anfield earlier in the season. What do you think?
I mean, I love Thiago. In possession, I love it. But I think it's for Liverpool, it's vital. It's what they do out of possession. I think whoever they play in the middle of the park, they're going to have to be able to run. They're going to have to run because the way that kind of they rotate Manchester City, it's all well and good. And I think Thiago, listen, he's a special talent, but I almost feel like he's more suited to the Champions League rather than the Premier League. But with Henderson and Fabinho in there, and maybe a Curtis Jones, maybe a Naby Keita, they're going to have to be able to get about. And with Henderson, as you said, with that protection, him and Fabinho, that's going to be vital as well. And as you said, helping out each fullback as well, so they're not left 1v1 and not exposed. So it's almost like going to the Etihad for Liverpool, I know they want to win, but they can't be too kind of gun-ho and thinking, right, we've got to win, we've got to overplay City. They've just got to stay in there, because a point for either side isn't the worst result in the world. But what Liverpool don't want to do is go to the Etihad, get big, and it's like, oh, it was only 1 point, now it's 4 again. So I think with the likes of Henderson and Fabinho, you just got a bit of a protection blanket there. And listen, they can both play, so it's not like you're losing anything, but it just gives you that safety blanket a little bit.
Yeah, there's so much to come into play in terms of the manager's thinking here. Like you said, the fact that it is only 1 point, so that isn't really on Liverpool to go and fully attack this game and take quite a risk-taking side, but they don't want to go and take too many risks.
No, they don't want to go and get beaten, basically.
Yeah.
Simple as that. That's as simple as that. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is one of the key decisions. I think he will go Henderson and Fabinho, and then who's that third midfielder? And if he goes Keita, I think that's quite telling. If he goes Thiago, that's quite telling in a sense that, you think he's going to go for it a bit more with Thiago. And I agree with you in terms of Thiago. I think Thiago's a wonderful player. I think he's struggled a bit with the physicality of the Premier League. I think and he's had issues around COVID and so on and so forth. I think he's been quite frustrated during his time at Liverpool. It hasn't quite worked out the way he expected to. Obviously, they expected to. But in saying that, I still think their best midfield is Fabinho, Henderson, Thiago. I think that's their best midfield, but maybe it's not necessarily the right midfield to play in this game. So I could understand why they would play somebody like Keita, who's come back into form as well, hasn't he? I mean, he's been playing quite well recently.
Do you think there's a possibility he might just say, we'll have 4 attackers? Because then he can play Jota, Mane, Salah, and obviously Diaz, and basically say one of you just filter back.
He did that before when we were talking to him before about playing the 4 attackers. I can't remember who it was. Obviously, it was Firmino, obviously Mane, Salah, and who was it again?
Was it Oxlade-Chamberlain?
I can't remember.
Like
but there was a big debate about playing.
Was it in the Champions League?
No, they went to the Etihad.
Yeah.
I think it might have been in a league game, and he ended up playing the 4 of them. He played the 4 and they went for it, and I think they got a result. And I think it might have been a draw. I can't remember anyway, but he has done it before.
Because it kind of allows him to physically say, all right, Fabinho and Henderson, you don't need to come over the halfway line. Do you know what I mean? You can just play them the ball and kind of let them express themselves.
Because if you play those guys high up the pitch, you're calling it on with City, aren't you? You're saying, right, okay, are you going to come at us? Because they've had to play a high lines. You think, well,
it's almost cat and mouse. If we're going to leave, because that's what I would do. I would leave Salah, Jota, and Mane as high as possible. Because then surely Cancelo, I know he's fantastic going forward. I know Kyle Walker, but you've always got that slight concern about, well, if I go too far forward and you look behind you and you've got, these 3 guys on the halfway line, that might just force City to go back a little bit.
It was Jota he played. He played Jota. He played Jota, Mane, Salah, and then he played Firmino in behind
the number 10 role,
That's what he did, He played that.
When Jota just signed.
Yes, he's come in and he's done really, really well. And we're all, who's he going to leave out? He played all 4 of them.
That's what I would do if I was him.
Yeah, it's a really interesting decision. But also, in terms of having someone like Henderson in there, you need the grown-ups. You need the sensible, cool heads in the middle of it, because this could be frantic if somebody isn't on the pitch getting a grip of the players as well.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly important when you've got someone like Henderson, that because there will be large periods in the game where I expect where Manchester City will be dominating possession, and that's where you need your Hendersons, your cool heads to kind of just everyone settle down, pull into position, rather than people just running here, there and everywhere. So even though at times people have questioned Henderson, maybe his ability, which I think is a little bit unfair, his leadership skills are something that you can't replace.
You can't buy it.
No.
It's something you either have or you don't have, and he has it in abundance. And I think
he's the loudest player in the Premier League. I mean, during lockdown, I went to an awful lot of games. Obviously, he is the loudest player.
Or Conor Cody might have something to say about that.
Oh, sorry. You're absolutely right. Maybe Conor Cody's the other one, actually. I thought about, those two are the loudest two players in the Premier League.
Yeah, and there's lots of players who've made their debuts next to Jordan Henderson, said he just talked to me all the way through the game. He just coaxed me through it. But look, that's not going to be the case. He's going to be more experienced next to him, alongside him at the Etihad. But like you say, the Manchester City midfield is quite an interesting choice here as well, because look, Pep Guardiola he probably gets accused of overthinking because we remember the decisions that he made that didn't work out, and that's probably why. Whereas when he sort of takes a risk on something and it comes off, we go, Guardiola being Guardiola, the man's just a genius. But when he goes into this game against Liverpool, what do you think he's going to do in midfield?
I don't think he's going to change much. I think it'll be KDB. I think Bernardo will play, and obviously I think Rodri will play, because I don't think Further's fit enough to do it, although I would play both of them because I like my defence protected at all times, and it kind of frees up your attackers to be a little bit more risk-taking. So, but I think he'll play those three, and Bernardo's the man, isn't he? Especially against Liverpool. Yeah. What he does against them is second to none, and if they play anywhere close to how they played Liverpool at Anfield at the Etihad, it could be a big problem for Liverpool.
Do you think it's as much with Bernardo as well, because he's a thinking player, isn't he? It's about how he sees the game. Is that when you're at this level, you've got two teams at this level, that's the kind of thing that makes the difference, as much as the physicality, as much as the player might be technically gifted or quick or physical, it comes down to actually being able to understand what the opponent is doing and understand how to try and negate that.
Yeah, he seems very good at showing up and giving the game what it actually needs. Like he
that's a better way of putting what I was trying to phrase.
It's weird because like I said, in the game against Anfield, like they was passing the ball, but nobody was really taking people on. And then all of a sudden, Bernardo just started streaming past people, and it started opening up things. And then people started obviously getting tighter to him, which then created space everywhere else, which then allowed the other City attackers to get into it. And that's how City like to play. They like spaces. And as soon as you narrow that space down, without the number 9, that's where they seem to have kind of struggled. And to a T, in the games that I've watched, especially the Palace game, that is something that I saw. They made chances, but the space was never there. And if they have the space against Liverpool, it's going to be massive problems.
Sean, you said you play De Bruyne in the midfield, but do you think he's not tempted to play him in that false 9 in this game?
That's what I said to Benny as well before. Right. That's normally what he's done in the bigger games. Yeah. He normally plays like Bernardo and Kevin, normally just like a pendulum, and then the wingers pretty much do what they want.
I think that will obviously influence his midfield choices, won't it? Really? 'Cause I mean, I'm fascinated where he'll play De Bruyne and Bernardo, whether he plays one of them through that middle area or not.
I think if he does, I think it will be more Bernardo that starts in that number 9 area, because he will naturally do it, and Kevin normally runs from deep in behind like a third man run sort of thing. So I think that's the way he will go. But like we say, it's Pep. You never actually know who he's going to play.
You never seem to see the best either of Gundogan and De Bruyne in the same midfield. You look at the period where De Bruyne was at and Gundogan really steps up. We've not seen Gundogan in that same type of form. And I don't know, do you think them two can play together?
It was the same because I had the conversation before, and everybody said the same thing about Bernardo. Because when De Bruyne was injured, that's when all Bernardo's goals were coming. Yeah. And it's hard to say they can't play together, because we've seen them play together and we've seen City pick up results. Yeah. I just think when they do play together, one of them loses that stamp of authority in a game they would have had, if that makes sense, rather than they can't play together. Yeah. They can, but
you lose one of them.
Yeah, you lose a bit of that person, because Kevin does everything that humanly possible. As an attacker, you know what it's like. If you had a guy behind you that could pass the ball like that, you just don't even need to call. You just make your little movements, and he puts the ball on the money most of the time.
But I think the point you raised as well, Jason, is a really good one, which is you can't talk about City's midfield without talking about the front three, because they're interchangeable. Yeah,
that's right. And obviously then if you say, so you're saying those three, but then you're saying you're leaving out Gundogan, aren't you?
Yeah,
I'd be surprised if he leaves out Gundogan.
I don't think Gundogan starts this game.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually don't think he will start. I think he can start Kevin and then even put Kevin beside Rodri a bit deeper, because it keeps him away from like the press from the midfield as well, and he can influence the game from a lot of places on the pitch. So there's a lot of ways you can go with the team that he puts out because of how talented they all are.
Yeah, and they can all do
Everyone's
different.
got different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's because it's not just about how we're going to set up. That's almost the most straightforward part of it, and it's not just about well, then okay, we're going to have 3 in midfield, 3 up front, and these people can all do this job. It's like well. I've got 3 players who can go on the right-hand side here, 3 players who can go on the, and they can all interchange throughout the game as well. It's not just that when we see them line up at the start of the game, that's how they're going to stay. Yeah,
and obviously then if you pick that midfield 3, then what do you do further forward? Because then you're thinking, well, Foden, Sterling, Mahrez, Grealish, one of those is going to miss out, aren't they?
I think Grealish.
That's the nature of playing at a club like City and Liverpool. I don't think any of them necessarily deserve to miss out, but Pep always seems to see something in a game that he says, okay, I'm picking this player because I've seen the way he defends sort of thing, whereas a normal manager would just say, he's in form, he's going to play. Whereas Pep doesn't. He reads the game and sees it completely different. And I've watched games and it's Bernardo and Kevin in the midfield, and then at one point in the game, they're both on the right-hand side. And I'm like, so where's the midfielders gone sort of it? But it works because they overload one side so much that it drags the whole rest of the team across. And then there's this big gaping hole for like Rodri, and the attackers come into play.
In another side, it might look unbalanced, but with City, it's deliberate, and it creates a problem for the opposing side. Of all the outfield players for this game, is Phil Foden the most nailed on to start, do we think, given his previous performances against Liverpool, 3 goals in his last 3 appearances? Is he the one, do you think?
Honestly, if I was the manager, he would have most probably been burnt out already.
He changed the game against Atletico Madrid as well.
I would find it so hard to leave Phil Foden out. I think even on his worst day, he causes so many unnecessary problems to defenders, like this touch here, the way he just goes past people. He takes that so quickly within his stride, and that's what he brings. You never know what he's going to do, because if you go close to him, he pops it round you and it goes round you. If you're too tight, he drags it round you and dribbles past you. So he's always isolating people and causing problems, and he's got a wand of a left foot.
I think he's incredible. Probably other than De Bruyne, you'd probably say, he is probably the one nailed on to start. But as you said there in midweek, when they needed something a little bit different, he was the one who produced that spark, getting the ball to his feet, finding space where seemingly there isn't any space. But as you said there, one thing that surprised me about Phil Foden, which I didn't know, he's got a turn of speed.
It's quick, isn't it?
It's quick. When I see him with the ball, when he starts to gather pace, he's running forward. I remember thinking, wow, I didn't know he had the afterburners as well. But he's someone who seems to be getting better and better. And I'm with Righty. If I was his manager, he'd be burnt out by now. It'd be him and De Bruyne that I pick every single week.
It just seems as though there isn't a question mark about this, not just because of everything that he has, but also his record against Liverpool as well. It's just that's got to play into it a bit.
I think so. Obviously he didn't start in midweek. Maybe that was a pointer to him starting on Sunday as well. But obviously he did come on and change the game. But it would be a huge surprise to me if he doesn't start the game. And as you say, he's done so well against Liverpool, and that will be in obviously Guardiola's thinking. It's a slightly different topic, but I think the handling of Foden by Guardiola has been exemplary. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I think English football should thank Guardiola for the way he's handled Phil Foden, really, because we've seen in the past players perhaps not quite as talented as Phil Foden, but not kind of develop in that way. And I think the development of him has been absolutely wonderful, and he's going to have an incredible career. He's a generational talent. He just really is, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him on Sunday.
To be right, you've obviously watched him a lot. Where's his best position? Because somebody asked me and I couldn't tell you.
In a similar position as Kevin De Bruyne. That's basically the problem. And when David Silva was there, that was a problem then, because that City have so many fantastic players in and around that position that the players that do actually come through end up filtering out to like the left or the right, because they have it in a James McAtee and Cole Palmer. They're all sort of that sort of player, and they end up being like wingers and that false number 9.
Do you think part of that is down to the fact that it's almost like a sort of the opposite of a virtuous circle, in that they have those players in that position that they can learn from, who are the very best in the world. And so the players coming through can emulate them and learn from them, and so they become better in that position as well.
But it also goes back to what we think about Pep in general, where we said all the players can pretty much play every position. That's because when they do come in the team, the majority of the time, unless you're established like Kane, they never play in their position. They always play right, and then sometimes they'll play the number 9. So they're learning all these positions while he's bringing them through. And Foden took that journey as well. Every time when he was first breaking through, sometimes he'd be in the middle, sometimes he'd be on the right, sometimes he'd be on the left. And that's just gave him I think that's elaborated on his football IQ, and it's helped him be able to play in so many different positions across the front and the midfield. So it's just like another string to his bow, basically.
So who have we gone for then for Manchester City? I've got the goalkeeper. I've definitely got the defence. So what are we doing then? What do we look? There's no point in trying to say what do we think Pep will do. What we should say, what do you think? If you were picking the team, what would you go for?
I'm going to go with what Jason said. I think he will play either Bernardo Silva or Kevin De Bruyne as the false 9. I think Foden starts. And I actually think Jack's going to start this game as well, to be honest with you. Yeah, I actually think
Why do
Jack
you think
will
so?
start. I don't know. I feel like against teams like Liverpool, there's certain things you need to do. And sometimes when you get in that area, although it's you need to win free kicks. Sometimes if your back's against the wall, you need those free kicks because it's a chance of a goal for one, and you get to slow down and gather yourself again. And I think not only does Jack give you that, but he also gives you that part where he can make a goal out of nothing. He will just go past you as if you're not there if he's on his day. And I think he's
almost
got better and better.
Unpredictability.
Yeah.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, and I think he's got better as well. He's finally seems like he's settling into the way City play. I think at the start, a lot of people were on his back, and I think it was wrong because they kept referring to the price tag. But I always remember the time when I left Man City to go to Chelsea. He's almost done the same thing coming from Villa, going to Man City. You're a big fish at Aston Villa, but now you're a big fish in a team full of big fish with a bunch of players that can do everything you can do, or if not, better than what you can do. So you're not going to get the ball all the time and as quick as you want it to have that space. You have to learn how to play in those little tight areas and still be yourself. And I think he's getting the hang of it now. And for me, he looks like he's getting better.
Yeah, you think Grealish will miss out, don't you? Unless Sean's just convinced you there.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, he nearly did. but no, I'm probably going to go in the midfield, Rodri, KDB and Bernardo Silva. And then probably, I think I'm going to go Mahrez, Sterling and Foden.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that will be my front 3.
Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I think. I mean, notwithstanding what I was saying, will he play, De Bruyne or Silva through the middle? I'm not sure he will, but obviously he's done it a lot in big games, and I think he's got to find a place for Foden. So Sterling will definitely play Foden, and I'm leaning towards Grealish as well. And then I would have thought Silva, Rodri, and De Bruyne are in the midfield.
Yeah. So we've got midfield sorted, but maybe a little bit of a question mark as to whether or not it's Grealish or whether he starts in that game or whether it's Sterling. For Liverpool, their front 3 I think is quite an interesting choice, because I know you've kind of naturally gone Salah, Mane, Jota, but Salah's not in great form at the moment. No. There's still an option for Firmino to come into that front 3, because although his goal-scoring record doesn't quite match up, it's about what he gives elsewhere and how that works against Manchester City. Is it as straightforward again? No, Salah, Mane, Jota.
No,
I think I got all those names wrong, and that is Salah, Mane, Jota.
Yeah, I don't think it's as simple as that. But for whatever reason, not even for whatever reason, Salah. I mean, he plays every single game. I know he's going through a blip now, but you know what they say. Obviously, for every game that he's not scoring for, that means he's one game closer to scoring. So I expect Salah to play. I expect Mane to play, because in the big games, more than not, these guys show up. And Jota's kind of just threw his name in the ring because he's their most informed player. I think he's second top goal scorer in the Premier League as well. So I think it's just going to go with them 3. I know Firmino, he was the glue, wasn't he, that put Mane and Salah together. But when you look at what Jota's done in such a short space of time, like, he's made himself one of the main front 3, and Luis Diaz as well, playing really, really well. But I just feel like for that goal that them 3 carry and the way that them 3 play together, I could have said them three starting up front. And it's a big game as well. And you know what you're going to get from them three. Obviously, it's not a bit unpredictable that you know what you're going to get. Mane gets his goals. We've seen Salah obviously score plenty of goals. And Jota, since he's gone to Liverpool, he's just hit the ground running. So I expect that to be their front three.
Diaz is an interesting one, I think, because he's come in, he probably settled quicker. Everybody said this openly. He settled quicker than they expected. But he has, in bigger games, at times been used as a substitute, or has not played the 90 minutes, even if he starts. So it's interesting to see what Klopp does with him.
I think he goes that way. I think Salah starts, although he hasn't been playing that well. I think Jota will go through the middle, but I think for some reason Diaz is going to start this game.
Not Mane.
No, I don't think Mane or Salah have, in the last 5 or 6 games, actually played that well. And if he drops one, it tends to always be Mane.
Oh yeah, he's not dropping Salah.
Yeah, it always tends to be Mane.
Do you think he'll be?
Do the contract negotiations
Yeah, I was going
play
to
it
exactly
as,
that. Yeah, I was going to say, is that you think you'll think I can't drop him? I'm trying to get him to sign a new contract and play in Man City. I know probably doesn't think that, but does it at all come across his?
I honestly don't know. I think you never know what people are thinking. It could be a possibility, but I've just always found, even watching them over the years, if anybody's ever been dropped or rested, it's always been Mane before Salah. And I think in dropping Mane, there's a better replacement on the right-hand side than if you drop Salah. Who do you put there? Because Mane doesn't really like to play on the right. Diaz doesn't play on the right, and neither does Jota. So who takes that space, whereas Mane's is easier to solve?
Do you know, it's one of them though where, because it's a big game and it's a massive game, you know what you're going to get from Mane. And Mane in the past has showed up in this game. So Luis Diaz, he's only just got here.
well, a bit too much in the one he got sent off.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So he's always involved in somehow. But so I think Jurgen Klopp, he knows what he's going to get from this front three. So it is a little bit of a risk to play Luis Diaz. And listen, he's been fantastic. I'm taking nothing away from him. He's really impressed me. But in this type of game, Jota, Salah, Mane, you know what you're going to get. So
Can you imagine even 6 weeks ago, though, even discussing the fact that Salah was a question? Even if you've all said he'll start with Salah, the fact that it's even a question.
I don't think it is a question, Salah.
No, okay.
But it's,
I think it is. I agree with you, Kelly.
I'm with these two. I'm with Jason and Kelly as well. I think the way they've bought in the last, a year, they've done it like one by one. They brought in Jota, and they brought in obviously Diaz, and then Harvey Elliott's come through. So now they can afford to keep them out of the team because they have capable replacements, whereas before they didn't. So people now have to keep playing well.
Yeah.
Oh, it's whether you play with the past and present or whether you play with the future. We're now getting into a whole philosophical debate, which is not where we wanted to go.